The arena was alive with the roar of the crowd. The ground shook under the thunderous applause echoing off the high walls. Lysara stood tall in the center, her heart pounding in her chest. She raised her weapon high, the blade gleaming in the bright lights, and the cheers grew louder. Victory was hers, once again, champion of the arena, undefeated, a symbol of strength and power. Lysara's people cheered, her voices joining together in one loud, unbroken chorus. She smiled, feeling the weight of her triumph. The alien warriors who had faced her before now stood in silence, knowing they could never match her power. The victories over her opponents had been swift and decisive, each one adding to her fame and glory. The crowd adored her, and she had earned it. She was a legend as she walked around the arena. Waving to the fans, Lysara felt a rush of pride. She could feel the power in her muscles, the heat of the battle still surging through her veins. Every time she stepped into the arena, she knew it was her moment, her time to shine. She was born for this, to fight, to win, and to lead. The noise from the crowd was deafening, and Lysara basked in it. Her people were proud of her, and it made her feel invincible. She glanced over at the grandstands, where the elite warriors and leaders of her species sat. They nodded at her, their faces full of respect. Then, just as she began to turn back to the crowd, something strange happened. The cheering died down. Not completely, but enough that she noticed it. Lysara's eyes narrowed, searching the stands. A strange unease settled in her chest. What was happening? She turned her head slowly, trying to find the source of the disturbance. And then she saw it. A human, the small, fragile figure, stood in the entrance to the arena. The crowd, once wild with excitement, fell silent in an instant. It was as if someone had pressed a button and turned off the sound. The sudden quiet was almost deafening. Lysara's heart skipped a beat. A human. Here, this wasn't normal. Humans weren't allowed in the arena. They were not warriors. They were not meant for this kind of battle. What was one doing here? And why had the crowd stopped cheering? Lysara could feel her stomach twist with confusion. She had never seen a human in person before. She had heard stories, of course, of their strange ways, their odd customs, but none of those stories had prepared her for this. She stared at the human, wondering if this was some kind of joke. Perhaps it was a mistake. Maybe it was an accident. But the human stood tall, unfazed by the silence surrounding them. There was no fear in their eyes, only calm determination. Lysara's gaze traveled up and down the human's body, taking in their simple, worn clothes. They looked so out of place, surrounded by towering warriors and alien spectators, and yet they seemed strangely at ease. Lysara clenched her fists. What was happening? Was this an insult? Had someone sent this human to mock her, to ruin her victory? The crowd remained silent, watching intently. Lysara could feel the eyes of the arena on her, waiting for her response. She had faced many challenges in her life, but this was different. The usual roar of excitement was now replaced by the quiet hum of uncertainty. Lysara's mind raced. What was this human doing here? The human took a step forward, and Lysara felt her pulse quicken. Footsteps echoed across the arena floor, filling the space with tension. The arena, which had been filled with triumphant cheers only moments ago, now felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Lysara knew she had to act. The crowd was waiting for her to react, to do something. She could feel the eyes of every single person on her, some eager to see what she would do, others filled with doubt. She took a deep breath, then turned to face the human, her back straight and her posture strong. "What do you want?" she called out, her voice carrying across the arena. The words were not spoken in anger, but with a hint of confusion. This was her arena, her victory, and no unknown was supposed to take it from her. The humans stopped in their tracks, looking directly at her. For a moment, everything was still. Even the air seemed to freeze. Then, with a calmness that took Lysara by surprise, the human spoke. "I've come for a challenge," they said, their voice steady, without hesitation. Lysara blinked in disbelief. A challenge? This human had come to challenge her. The words hung in the air, leaving Lysara stunned. The crowd murmured, unsure how to react. A challenge? It was laughable. No one challenged Lysara. She had never been beaten. She was the strongest warrior in the arena, and no one dared to question that. But the humans stood there, unmoving, their eyes locked onto hers. There was no fear, no sign of weakness. The challenge hung in the air between them like an invisible force. Lysara's mind raced. Was this a trick? Some kind of joke meant to embarrass her? Or was this human truly foolish enough to think they could best her in combat? She narrowed her eyes, feeling her muscles tense. Whatever this human thought, they would soon learn how. Wrong they were. No one, not even a human, could stand against her in the arena. The crowd's murmur grew louder as the realization began to sink in. Lysara's grip on her weapon tightened. The time for celebration was over. Now, it was time for something else entirely. The arena had gone silent, and it was in that silence that Lysara realized this human was not just another opponent. They were something different, something she had never encountered before, and that thought made her more curious than anything else. Lysara stood still, her grip tight around her weapon, her heart pounding in her chest. The human's words echoed in her ears. "I've come for a challenge." She stared at the small figure in the center of the arena, her mind struggling to understand what was happening. No one had ever dared to challenge her, especially not a human. The crowd, still silent, was watching closely, waiting for her response. Lysara could feel their eyes on her. They were confused, uncertain. Some looked at the human with curiosity, while others simply waited to see what the champion would do. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady her thoughts. The human's challenge was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The arena were clearingly, those who had earned the right to fight could step into the ring. Humans weren't allowed in the arena. They were not warriors. They were not meant to be here. But this human was standing before her unafraid, asking for a chance to fight, her eyes locked with the human's. And for a moment, Lysara wondered if she was dreaming. Was this some sort of trick? Maybe they had sent the human to mock her, to test her strength. She had faced many battles, but this one felt different. The silence grew heavier. The human was still waiting, their face calm and collected. Lysara felt the pressure mounting. She refused. It would be a sign of weakness, something that no champion could afford. If she accepted, she would have to fight a humana creature that, in her mind, was beneath her. But something about this human's confidence made her hesitate. Was there something more to them than just their small size and fragile appearance? Lysara shook her head, pushing the doubt aside. She was the champion. She had fought and won countless battles. No human could beat her. No one could. "Very well," she said, her voice firm and clear, the sound of her words echoing through the arena. "You want a challenge? You will have one." Her eyes narrowed as she took a step forward, her weapon raised in a fighting stance. "But know this, human, you are not ready for this fight. You will regret stepping into this arena." The human didn't flinch. They simply nodded, as if they had expected her words. Lysara felt a strange rush of irritation. How could someone so small, so unworthy, look at her like that? Without waiting for another moment, Lysara lunged forward, her weapon aimed at the human. She was quick, her movements precise, her years of combat training guiding her every step. The human barely moved, dodging to the side with surprising speed. Lysara's eyes widened in shock. The human had avoided her strike, not through strength, but through agility. She quickly adjusted her stance, trying to follow their movements. They were quick, but they were still human, and she was the superior fighter. She would catch them. She swung her weapon again, faster this time, hoping to catch the human off guard. But again the human dodged, their movements smooth and controlled. Lysara gritted her teeth. This was impossible. She had never faced an opponent like this before. She continued to press the attack, her strikes coming faster and harder, but each time the human found a way to evade her. It was as if they could predict her every move. Lysara's frustration began to grow. She had never been outmatched like this. The human was too quick, too smart. It was infuriating. The crowd, once silent, now began to murmur. They had never seen anything like this before. Some began to cheer, perhaps out of surprise or excitement. Others remained silent, uncertain of what was happening. The balance of the battle had shifted, and Lysara was starting to feel it. Human moved again, this time closing the distance between them. Lysara swung her weapon in a wide arc, but the human ducked beneath her strike, their hand reaching out to grab her arm. Lysara's eyes widened in disbelief. What was this human doing? They couldn't possibly think they could overpower her. But to her surprise, the human didn't try to overpower her with brute strength. Instead, they twisted her arm, using her own momentum against her. Lysara stumbled slightly, trying to regain her balance, but the human was already steps ahead. Their next move coming too fast for her to react. For the first time in years, Lysara found herself caught off guard. The human had forced her to step back, and the crowd was growing louder with each passing moment. Lysara's mind raced. How was this possible? How could a human, a creature that was supposed to be weak and fragile, be this skilled? The human stepped back, giving her a moment to breathe. Their eyes locked with hers, calm and focused, as if they weren't even tired. Lysara could feel the weight of the fight in her limbs. She was not used to being tested like this. She shook her head, pushing away the doubt creeping into her mind. This was still her arena. She was still the champion. She would not be beaten by a human. I am Lysara, she said, her voice low and full of determination. I am the strongest warrior here. No one defeats me. The human didn't respond with words. They simply nodded, as if understanding the challenge she had issued. Then, without warning, they moved again. This time, Lysara was ready. She swung, her weapon with all her strength aiming for the human's chest. The fight had gone on long enough. She needed to end it. But the human was already gone. In a flash, they had darted to the side, their body twisting as they dodged yet another attack. Lysara's strike hit nothing but air, and for a split second, she lost her footing. The humans seized the opportunity, their hand coming up to push her back. Lysara staggered, her breath coming in heavy gasps. She was still the stronger one. She had to be. The crowd was waiting, their eyes filled with expectation. But the longer the fight went on, the more she realized this human was not what she had imagined. They were something more. The arena was tense. Lysara and the human were locked in a fierce standoff, neither of them willing to back down. The crowd was silent, watching the two combatants with wide eyes. Lysara had never faced an opponent like this before, human. And yet, this human was proving to be a challenge in ways that she hadn't expected. Lysara's muscles were sore from the earlier attacks, but her pride kept her going. She was the champion. No human, no matter how skilled, could take that away. From her, she adjusted her grip on her weapon, her focus sharpening. She moved first, her blade slicing through the air with a sharp, controlled motion. The human, once again, dodged to the side, barely moving in time. Lysara's eyes narrowed. The human was quick to quick. She had to get serious. She took a step back, then lunged forward with a low strike aimed at the human's legs. The attack was fast, and Lysara knew it would be difficult for anyone to avoid. But the humans saw it coming. In a surprising twist, they flipped backward, jumping over the blade. Landing lightly on their feet with barely a sound, Lysara's breath caught in her chest. This was no ordinary human. This was someone who had trained, who had fought. The realization hit her hard. She had underestimated them. The human wasn't just quick, they were smart. They knew how to use their surroundings. Lysara gritted her teeth and shifted her stance, moving more cautiously this time. She had been too reckless before, but now she needed to think. She needed to outsmart this human. She swung her blade in a wide arc, aiming to trap the human in the corner of the arena. But once again, the human was ready. They dashed to the side, slipping out of reach, and then they retaliated. A fist flew toward Lysara's face, but she blocked it just in time with her arm, the blow ringing in her bones. The human wasn't just avoiding her attacks, they were countering Lysara. Felt a sting of frustration. She was the champion. She had never been so challenged. But this human, they didn't fight like any opponent she had ever faced. They fought with intelligence, using strategy and agility, not just raw power. The fight continued, each of Lysara's strikes getting more desperate. She was trying to overwhelm the human with speed, but every time they were one step ahead. The crowd watched in stunned silence, unsure of what was happening. No one had ever seen Lysara struggle in a fight. But now, the human was making her work for every hit in the heat of the moment. Lysara tried to strike again, swinging her weapon downward with all her strength. But at the last moment, the human moved to the side, grabbing Lysara's wrist and twisting it as the blade slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. For the first time, Lysara stood weaponless in the middle of the arena. Facing the human with nothing but her fists, the human stood a few paces away, their chest rising and falling with each breath. Lysara could see the sweat on their forehead, but they were calm to calm. Their body was ready, their posture strong. As if they had been preparing for this moment their whole life, Lysara knew that if she didn't regain control, she would lose. Her eyes darted around the arena, searching for something, anything to use. But the human was already closing in, forcing Lysara to react. She tried to throw a punch, but the human blocked it easily, their hand catching hers midair. The human's grip was strong, not just from force, but from the control they held over every move. Lysara pulled back, trying to shake free, but the human wasn't giving her an inch. They moved with such precision, such control. It was as if every move was calculated. It was frustrating. How could someone so small, so fragile, be so skilled? For a moment, Lysara stood frozen, catching her breath. She had underestimated the human, but that was a mistake she wouldn't make again. She was Lysara, the greatest warrior in the arena. She wasn't about to let a human take her down. With a roar of frustration, Lysara launched herself forward again, more determined than before. She was not going to lose. She wasn't going to let anyone think that she was weak. Her fist flew toward the human's chest, and this time it landed with a solid thud. The human staggered back, surprised by the strength of the punch. Lysara pressed her advantage, trying to land another blow. But the human recovered quickly, dodging to the side once again. Lysara's heart raced. This human was relentless. Every time she thought she had them, they slipped away. Every time she tried to catch them, they were already somewhere else. She had no idea how much longer she could keep up. But then, in a moment of sheer desperation, Lysara did something she had never done before. She let go of her pride. Instead of trying to overpower the human, she focused on her speed, using every ounce of her training to outmaneuver them. She didn't need strength to win this fight. She needed control. She needed to use her mind, not just her body. The next time the human moved toward her, Lysara shifted her position, stepping to the side just in time to grab their arm and twist it behind their back. The human tried to break free, but Lysara held firm, her grip like iron. The crowd went wild, their cheers echoing in the arena as Lysara pinned the human to the ground. She had done it. She had won. For a moment, Lysara stood over the human, her chest heaving with exhaustion. She had fought harder than she ever had before, and now the victory was hers. The human lay still beneath her, their eyes closed, their breathing heavy. Lysara had proven herself once again. But as the adrenaline began to fade, Lysara felt something she had never expected. She felt a sense of respect for the human. They had pushed her to her limits, and in a way they had made her better. This wasn't just a fight to her anymore. It was a reminder that there was always room to grow, always someone to learn from. The arena was still. As the crowd waited for her to make her next move, the arena was silent, except for the steady sound of Lysara's breath, which came in heavy, controlled gasps. Her eyes never left the human, still lying on the ground beneath her, their body unmoving. Lysara's grip tightened, but her heart wasn't racing from the fight anymore. It was the strange feeling of respect that lingered in her chest, a feeling she had never expected. She had won, that much was clear. But the victory felt hollow, as if something had shifted inside of her. The human had pushed her to her limits, made her question everything she knew about combat. Lysara had never been forced to fight this hard before, and now that the battle was over, she didn't know what to feel. The crowd was still cheering, their voices rising in a mixture of excitement and disbelief. They had watched as Lysara, the undefeated champion, had been challenged by a human and had barely won. The whole arena had held its breath, unsure of the outcome, unsure if Lysara could pull through. But Lysara wasn't thinking about the crowd. She was focused on the human, who still hadn't moved. Something wasn't right. Without warning, the human's eyes snapped open, their gaze locking with hers. Lysara froze. There was no fear in their eyes, only calmness, determination. They weren't finished yet. Despite everything, despite being pinned to the ground, the human was still standing, still fighting in their own way. Lysara stepped back, releasing her grip on the human's arm, but she didn't let her guard down. The humans slowly pushed themselves up, their movements careful, deliberate. They were not defeated. They weren't even close. And that realization hit Lysara like a blow to the chest. The humans stood tall, their face bruised but not broken. They were exhausted, just as Lysara was, but their body was still poised, still ready. There was no surrender in them, no sign of giving up. And that made Lysara realize something important. This human wasn't just here to fight. They were here to prove something, to show that they could stand with the greatest warrior in the arena. For a moment, Lysara said nothing. She simply watched the human, waiting for their next move. But the human did not strike. Instead, they simply stood there, breathing steadily, their eyes never leaving hers. Lysara felt a strange tension in the air. It wasn't a challenge anymore. It was something deeper. You... Don't want to stop? Lysara asked, her voice soft but steady. The human's lips curled into a faint smile. I didn't come here to stop. The words hit her like a hammer. She had expected the human to back down. She had expected them to yield, to accept defeat. But instead, they were standing firm, unshaken. They weren't afraid of her, of the fight. They had faced her, and despite everything, they had held there. Ground. Lysara took a step back, still watching them carefully. This wasn't the end of the fight. No, something else was about to happen. The human moved first, stepping forward with slow, deliberate steps. Lysara tensed, ready for whatever they might do. But then, unexpectedly, the human stopped, in the center of the arena, facing her directly. I came here for more than just a fight, they said, their voice calm but firm. I came here to show you that strength isn't just about power. It's about will, about determination. Lysara blinked, her brow furrowing. What did they mean by that? She had spent her entire life training, fighting, winning. She had always believed that strength was measured by the ability to overpower your opponent. But this human, they had shown her a different kind of strength. They didn't have the same power, the same physical advantage, but they had something else. She took another step back, unsure of what to make of it. She had never met anyone like this human before. It was clear now that their challenge wasn't about winning, it was about something deeper, something she had never considered. Human's eyes softened as they spoke again. You don't have to be afraid of change, Lysara. You don't have to fight for the wrong reasons. Your strength has always been in your heart, in your will to never give up. But sometimes that strength needs to come from somewhere else. Lysara felt a strange sensation stir inside her. The words were unlike anything she had ever heard. They were not a challenge. They were an offer. It's an offer to change, to see strength in a different light. For the first time in the entire fight, Lysara felt herself hesitate. She'd always been so sure of herself, so confident in her power. But now, this human was forcing her to question everything. Was she truly as strong as she believed? Was there something she was missing? The crowd had fallen silent, sensing the shift in the air. The once loud cheers had faded into a quiet hum, as if they were all holding their breath, waiting for what would happen next. Lysara felt the weight of their gaze, but it didn't matter anymore. This wasn't about them. This was about her and the human. She lowered her head slightly, a sign of respect. What is it you want, human? She asked, her voice softer than before. The human took another step forward, their eyes meeting hers with quiet determination. I want you to see that there's more to strength than just winning. There's more to being a warrior than defeating others. Sometimes the greatest strength is found in knowing when to stop fighting. Lysara stood still, taking in the human's words. They were right. They were more than just a fighter. They were something else. Something she couldn't quite put into words. And maybe, just maybe, that was the strength she had been missing all along. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Lysara stood there, her mind racing with thoughts she had never considered. The human had challenged her in ways she never expected. And now, she wasn't sure if she was the same warrior she had been when she first stepped into the arena finally. She spoke again, her voice steady. "You have shown me something today, something I didn't understand before." Human smiled, a simple, humble smile that somehow carried more weight than any words. And with that, Lysara knew this fight was over not because she had defeated the human, but because the human had shown her something far more powerful than victory. The arena remained still, the silence pressing down on Lysara's shoulders like an invisible weight. She had fought countless battles, faced opponents of all kinds, and each time she had emerged victorious. But today was different. The humanness, strange, small creature, had done something she had never experienced before. They had made her question everything she had known about strength. Lysara stood in the center of the arena, her breathing steady, but her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The crowd was no longer cheering. They were waiting, watching her every move. She could feel their eyes on her, expectant, hoping for a clear winner. But Lysara knew there was no clear winner here. There had been no fight in the traditional sense. The human hadn't defeated her with brute force. It hadn't overpowered her. But they had done something far more powerful. Lysara turned her gaze back to the human. They were standing tall, their posture calm but firm. Despite everything, they hadn't backed down. They hadn't given in. And it was that quiet strength that had unsettled her. She had faced enemies who fought with strength, with speed, and with rage, but the human had fought with something else. Something Lysara couldn't quite define. For the first time, Lysara realized that maybe strength wasn't just about winning battles. Maybe it was about something more. It was about understanding, about pushing past the limits of what she thought was possible. The human had shown her that. And now, she couldn't ignore it. The human took a step forward, their eyes meeting hers once again. Lysara's heart skipped. A beat, there was no fear in their eyes, only quiet confidence. They had come here to challenge her, but in doing so, they had also challenged her ideas, her beliefs. And now, they stood before her, waiting for her to make the next move.
"You've
proven your strength, human," Lysara said, her voice quiet but strong. "You've shown me that there's more to being a warrior than just fighting. But tell me, what happens now? What do you want from me?" The human stood still for a moment, as if considering her words carefully. Then, with a simple, calm smile, they spoke. "I don't want anything from you, Lysara," they said softly. "I just want you to see that we're not so different. We may be from different worlds, but we share the same desire, to prove ourselves, to be strong, to be worthy. I came here not to defeat you, but to show you that strength can come in many forms." Lysara's mind raced. What the human said made sense, but it felt strange. She had always thought of strength as something physical, something that could be measured by the number of battles won or the amount of damage done. But the human had shown her something else entirely, a kind of strength that wasn't about power, but about resilience, about willpower, about refusing to give up no matter what. The crowd was watching, their silence now more intense than ever. Lysara could feel their eyes on her, waiting for her to respond. She took a deep breath and slowly lowered her head. The human had earned her respect, something she had never expected to feel for someone so different from herself. But here she was, standing before them, not as an opponent, but as an equal. "You've changed the way I see things," Lysara said, her voice low and sincere. "I didn't understand before. I thought strength was just about power, about crushing your enemies. But now I see that it's more than that. You've shown me that strength comes from the heart, from never giving up, from finding a way to keep going, even when everything tells you to stop." The human smiled again, a simple, kind smile that filled Lysara with something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. She had spent her life fighting, but now standing before this human, she realized that There was more to life than just victory. There was more to strength than just winning battles. Lysara took another step back, looking around the arena. The crowd, still silent, was waiting for her to act. They were waiting for her to decide. She could feel the weight of their expectations, but for the first time, she didn't care. This wasn't about them. This was about her, and the human who had taught her something she had never known. "I will fight you no more," Lysara said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You have proven your worth, and you have earned my respect. I've learned more from you than I ever thought I could." The human's eyes widened in surprise, but their smile only grew. "Thank you, Lysara. That's all I wanted to show. You that strength is more than just what you can do with your hands. It's about what you carry inside." Lysara nodded, feeling something shift inside her. The weight that had been pressing on her shoulders seemed to lift, and for the first time in her life, she felt free. Free from the constant need to prove herself. Free from the idea that strength meant always being the best, always winning. She had been wrong, and the human had shown her that. The arena was still, but now it felt different. The crowd had been waiting for the fight to end, for someone to win. But what they didn't know was that the real victory had already been won, not in the clash of weapons or the strength of fists, but in the understanding between two different beings. Lysara turned to face the human once more, her eyes meeting. Theirs with newfound respect. "You're right," she said quietly. "There is more to strength than I ever realized. I will not forget this." And with that, Lysara turned and walked away from the center of the arena. The human had not defeated her in battle, but in a way, they had won. They had shown her that true strength was not about winning the fight, it was about learning and understanding, as Lysara made her way out of the arena. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the vast space. But this time, Lysara didn't need the cheers. She didn't need the applause. She had already won something far more important. She had learned the true meaning of strength. The arena was still alive with the energy of the crowd, but Lysara didn't hear it. She didn't need to hear it. As she walked away from the center, a calmness settled over her, the weight of the battle and the lessons she had learned still fresh in her mind. The cheers, once deafening, now felt distant, fading into the background. She had learned something more valuable than victory that day, and that was enough. The humans stood at the edge of the arena, watching her, their expression calm, no sign of arrogance or triumph. Lysara knew the human had nothing to prove anymore. The challenge had been about more than just a fight. It had been about understanding, about recognizing that there was strength in vulnerability, strength in learning, and strength in respecting others. As she reached the edge of the arena, Lysara turned back one last time. The human was still there, unmoving, their eyes locked on hers. They hadn't needed to say much. Their actions had spoken louder than any words could. Lysara took a deep breath. This moment, this battle, had changed her. It had opened her eyes to something greater than herself, something more than just the arena. It had shown her that true strength wasn't always about overpowering others. It was about understanding, about growth, and about embracing the lessons life had to offer. The crowd had begun to stir, and the applause grew louder, but it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't just about Lysara's victory. It was about the respect between two fighters, two beings from different worlds who had come to understand each other in a way no one had ever imagined. The human finally spoke, their voice carrying across the arena. "Thank you, Lysara, for showing me that strength is more than just the fight." Lysara nodded slowly, her heart swelling with a feeling she couldn't quite describe. "And thank you," she said, her voice steady but filled with meaning, "for showing me that there's more to strength than I ever realized." The human smiled, their eyes filled with quiet pride. "You're a great warrior, Lysara. But now, you're something more." Lysara's chest tightened with emotion. She had spent her life training, fighting, and winning. But in this moment, she realized that she had been wrong about so many things. She had thought that victory was the ultimate prize. She had thought that strength was about defeating others. But now, she knew that the greatest victory wasn't in crushing your opponent, it was in learning from them. respecting them and growing together. The applause grew louder as Lysara turned once more. Making her way to the exit of the arena, the crowd was still cheering, but this time, it wasn't just for her. It was for the human too, for the lessons they had taught everyone in the arena that day. Lysara felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, a sense of peace that she had never known before. As she walked out of the arena, the human's words echoed in her mind. "You're something more." Lysara didn't know exactly what that meant, but she knew it was true. She was no longer just a warrior. She was someone who had learned, who had grown, and who had found a new kind of strength. A strength that didn't rely on power or domination, but on understanding and respect. And that was enough. As the sun set over the arena, casting a warm golden light over the stone walls, Lysara walked away, her head held high. The journey she had begun that day was far from over, but she knew now that she didn't have to walk it alone. There was always more to learn, more to discover, more to understand. The human had shown her that. The arena had gone silent once. Again, but this time, it wasn't a silence filled with tension. It was a silence of reflection, of understanding, and of respect. Lysara smiled softly, the feeling of victory no longer tied to a battle fought with weapons, but to a battle fought with the heart. She had won something much greater than a fight. She had won a new way of seeing the world, and that was the greatest victory of all.